All right, I'll give you probably about a 2-minute warning, and then we'll get started. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience today as we got everyone, just about everyone through the queue down there at security. Sorry for the delays on that. My name's Fields Mosley. I'm the Communications Director here at Maricopa County. Glad you're joining us, whether it's online or in person. And boy, there's a lot of you in person today. So welcome to our third press conference leading up to Election Day. Yay, it's here tomorrow. It's going to be great. Know there's a lot of interest in how the ballots are cast in Maricopa County. And just for your awareness, I think a lot of you are seeing the crowd we expected. We've credentialed about 650 members of the media, and a lot of you are here today. So we're going to talk about what you can expect in the coming days as ballots continue to be counted, as well as how we report the results tomorrow night, starting tomorrow night at around 8 o'clock. With me today, I have Supervisor Bill Gates from the Board of Supervisors. He represents District 3. Also with me, Recorder Stephen Richard, the Maricopa County Recorder. And then I have Zach Schira. He is the Assistant County Manager over elections as well as external affairs. And he's going to speak to you a little bit today about some of the tabulation of what happens after Election Day. Deputy Elections Director for Communications, Jennifer Lewer. She'll be doing what we've been doing the last couple of press conferences. She'll be handling the Q&A. Of course, she handles this information a lot, and we'll do our best to try to get to everyone's questions. Obviously, we're not going to get to everyone's questions with the room this full. So hopefully get most of the important things covered for you, and we'll do our best to do that. So without further ado, Supervisor Bill Gates will start us off. Thank you.
Thanks, Fields. Really appreciate it. And just like Fields said, want to thank everyone, our local, national, and international reporters for being here today. We appreciate your efforts to help get out the facts about our election here in Maricopa. And the Board of Supervisors are very proud, as I'm sure the recorder is as well, about all the different options that residents and voters. If you want to vote by mail, you have that option. If you want to drop it off in a drop box, you can do that as well. If you want to vote in person, you're able to do that 7 days straight before the election. And then finally, if you want to vote on Election Day, as I always like to say the old-fashioned way, you have that option as well. So we've done our part there. Now the second part is we understand that there are some out there who have questions about how our elections are run, and so it's very important to us that people have faith and confidence in how we run elections, and that's why we've tried to be as transparent as possible, holding these press conferences, getting information out there, putting it on our website. But then we're asking for something in return. We're asking for our residents to be good citizens, and in particular, for those people who are involved in these elections, if, unfortunately, they're not successful, asking them to accept these results. Now, we are thrilled by the level of participation that we're seeing in this. Voters in Maricopa County are getting involved and they're voting. As of 0.5 million ballots. That's more than we had received at this point in 2016, and we're approaching the numbers that we had in 2020. But tomorrow we expect about another 600,000 ballots, and that will bring us to a total of around 2.1 million. And we want everyone to know out there that the team at Maricopa County Elections and the Recorder's Office, we are ready. We have the resources that we need. We have a great team that is well trained and ready for a very successful election day tomorrow. But we do know that there will be focus on how the results are reported. So we have asked the recorder to join us today to discuss ballot processing, voter registration, and other matters.
Okay. Does this move up? No? All right. Okay, fantastic. All right, my name is Stephen Richard. I'm the Maricopa County Recorder. Thank you very much to Fields. Thank you to Zach. Thank you to Supervisor Gates for allowing me to crash this press conference. I'm going to talk about 3 things. There are a few important things that we've been collecting that we want to share with you, and some constituent services, and then, of course, early voting. On the topic of voter registration, I think a majority of my office 4 years. When I took this office in January of 2021, we had about 2.6 million active registered voters. We installed a new director of voter registration, we built a new voter registration database, and we engaged in the first ever voter list maintenance project ever in Maricopa. For the 2022 general election, we were down to about 2.4 million active registered voters. We went up to about 2.5 million active registered voters by the beginning of September. In the final month, we went up about another 100,000 to 2.6 million active registered voters, just that, which is the figure that we are using for this November 2024 general election. That does include 1,000 voter registration forms that were dropped off on the single day of voter registration forms in Maricopa County's history. We had people with entire trash in our lobby. Now, a lot of people have asked about 50,000 of those voter registration forms that we simply wanted to process and could process to be able to participate in this election. 40 registration to say they were needing attention. Those would be voter registration forms that were damaged, voter registration forms torn, voter registration forms written illegibly, registration forms that tried to register Mickey Mouse, Jerry Seinfeld, Donald Duck, among others. This put a lot of pressure on the staff. It actually has negative ramifications for voters, in the form of, if somebody submits a voter registration form that is handwritten, that has been damaged by, been torn, we still are required by law to process that voter registration form. We do it to the best of our ability, but sometimes that information is not perfectly accurate. Similarly, if somebody is working with a voter registration group and does not know that he or she has to provide documented proof of citizenship or documented proof of residence, then that person has to go into suspense. Now, the good news is that every registrant who is lacking either information or it's unclear or hasn't provided documented proof of citizenship, voter registrant who is lacking either information or it's unclear or hasn't provided documented proof of citizenship or documented proof of residency is mailed a letter to the address that we have on file for that registrant. And so we do alert registrants that they need to take some additional step in order to be off of suspense, in order to be fully registered, or in order to be able to fully vote a ballot. I will tell you that this has been a thorn in the side of county recorders throughout Arizona for many years, but it has picked up in recent years. Paper registration forms being done improperly or incompletely. This does include one of the groups that has made news in Pennsylvania, and it is a group that we have worked with before, and we have admonished them to please submit better voter registration forms, to please do more quality control. This is something that we have also discussed with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. We are in a position to be able to handle and help as many of those voters, should they show up tomorrow, as possible. We have voter registration staff members in the command center. We also have a hotline going on right now in order to be able to repair any voter registration statuses that need to be repaired tomorrow. That being said, we are seeing a slightly higher percentage of provisional ballots. That number is still low. I think it's approximately 5,600 as of today, but that is something that we are paying attention to for tomorrow. All right. Next topic is motor vehicle division issue. This is something that has continued to be in the news. It is okay, so this was an issue that my office discovered about 2 months ago. We then worked with the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Governor's office to figure out how to resolve that. That included me filing a lawsuit against Secretary Fontes, and we got a ruling from the Arizona Supreme Court. That ruling from the Arizona Supreme Court said, through no fault of any of the people currently in office, through no fault through any of the people who were registering, those voters have been affected and have not provided documented proof of citizenship as Arizona law contemplates. However, we are not supposed to do anything with those voters for the purpose of this election. So those voters will still in Maricopa County be able to vote a full ballot. At this point, we have not yet decided how we're going to handle those voters after the election, but that will be after the canvass, and that will be something that we will work closely with the 14 other counties as well as Secretary Fontes in order to contact those voters and get the requisite documented proof of citizenship for future elections. But again, importantly, I know because it's been in the news and because this is currently the subject of a public records lawsuit between a legal interest group and the Secretary, I know this has been in the news, but it does not have any bearing on voters' participation in this election or voters' ability to vote a full ballot tomorrow. Okay, moving on to constituent services. In the past month, we have received approximately 24,000 emails to our general voter info inbox, and we have received about 88,000 calls to our call center during the month of October. This has ranged from anything to why my wife already received her mail ballot, when is my coming, to where do I show up to vote, to I spilled something on my ballot, can I request a new ballot, to what are the hours of operation at this voting location, to I need to provide documented proof of citizenship in order to be able to vote full ballot status, to I need to provide additional information such that I can get out of suspense status, and anything else that you can think of in terms of voter inquiries. The team has been amazing, and they have been working exceptionally long hours both in the call center and at the email, I guess at the computers, to answer those emails, and has gotten back to those. Regarding signature verification, we have already completed signature verification on approximately 1.4 million ballot packets. We have had at times over 150 people working on signature verification when we have made an all-hands call. That's in addition to the full-time but temporary staff that we have brought in who do signature verification for 9 hours every single day in the modular facilities that the board has built over the past 2 years. Of those approximately 1.4 million ballot packets, we have sent approximately 27,000 to curing so far. Now, what curing is that's the process by which we attempt to contact the voter if we cannot match the signature. So what we do is we send the signature and the 3 most recent signatures that we have on file to a trained first-level reviewer, whether Republican, Democrat, or Independent. That reviewer looks at it. If the reviewer doesn't like it, it goes to a manager immediately. If the reviewer does like it, it goes to an audit queue. If the manager also does not like the signature, then we engage in the curing process. Calls are going out not round the clock, because that would be a little rude if we called you at 1 a.m., but they're going from 8 a.m. to about 7 p.m. every single day in an effort to get in touch with those voters. We have cured about 15,000 so far out of that 27,000. We have until 5 calendar days after Election Day in order to cure as many of those as we can. And so please, if you can do something, we appreciate it if you can encourage people to go to beballotready.vote. beballotready.vote. They can see if their ballot has been received. They can see if their signature has been confirmed. They can also take steps to cure their ballot packet at beballotready.vote should they need to. Now, once signature verification is done, and once the ballot has been audited, only then does it come back into our MCTEC facility, and only then is this green envelope sliced open. At that point, it goes to what we call a ballot processing team. This is a bipartisan team of 2 workers who are taking the ballot out of the envelope. Now, this is the first stage in which really the 2-page ballot really comes into play. So as I think all of you know, this is the first time that Maricopa County has had a 2-page ballot since 2006. Since 2006, we have on average 79 contests. Now, you might say, Stephen, we're all quite adept at taking letters out of envelopes. We've been doing it our entire lives. Why does it really matter if it's 1 page versus 2 pages? And I'm going to show you a little bit why it matters. When we take a ballot packet out of the envelope, we have to do a number of things. First, we have to make sure that there are, in fact, 2, and that there's a page 1 of 2 and a page 2 of 2. This is important for the integrity of the process. This is why we don't just simply send these ahead to tabulation as soon as we receive them, because somebody could have hypothetically put 2 page 1 ballots in there, and you don't get to vote for president twice. We also have to make sure that this little number right up here matches the number that is on the ballot envelope, to make sure that it's the right style, to make sure that you didn't show up to a ballot party, you received your friend's ballot from Mesa, but actually you live in Phoenix and you returned the wrong ballot style. Or, believe it or not, you return a ballot style from a previous election. Yes, we do have people who will send back ballots from the primary or even from the 2022 election in this envelope. So that's something that we're looking at. Also, if those of you who remember, I'm a Diet Coke addict, so if you remember in the 1990s when you went to a vending machine and you had to get a crisp dollar bill or you had to flatten it out in order such that it could go through the vending machine and then you can get your Coke. Similarly too with the tabulators. So we have to make sure that these are not damaged. We have to make sure that there's no gum on it. We have to make sure that there's no tear on it. We have to make sure that there's no other mysterious substance on it that would interfere with tabulation. So we're doing all that, getting them both ready, and obviously instead of having one, we're having two in every ballot packet, and then we are documenting it. Now, a lot of people ask about chain of custody in the Maricopa County elections process. This is where chain of custody happens. So any single time that we take an action with a ballot that comes in a return ballot packet, we are marking it on this log. Meaning that if it enters a tray and it enters ballot processing as 200 packets and therefore we think 400 ballots, and then it leaves the room as something other than 400 ballots, then we know exactly why that was done and we know where it has gone to. So for instance, if you have one that has a big tear in it and can't be tabulated, then we will mark that as a duplication, we will mark this on this sheet, and we will send it ahead to a different place in order to be duplicated by a bipartisan team. Now, in terms of raw numbers, as of early this morning, we were around 2.2 million ballots processed and sent ahead to tabulation. So translate this. That means we are around approximately 1.1 to 1.2 million voters that we have sent ahead to the board in order for tabulation to happen on those ballots. So 2.2 approximately million ballots, but that translates to roughly 1.1 to 1.2 million voters. I anticipate that we will have approximately another 500,000 ballots processed in order for the board's results that they will put out on Wednesday. And we currently have 159 boards currently operating. So over the past 3 weeks, we have been spending long time doing the voter registration work, doing the signature verification work, and we are now round-the-clock ballot processing. We are running 3 shifts, one from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., one from 5 p.m. until midnight, and one from midnight until 6 a.m. That last one has been, it has been my privilege to oversee that one, and it's democracy after dark if any of you should wish to participate in the future. We have 159 boards currently operating. By boards, I mean a bipartisan team of 2 workers. In 2022, we had 65 boards, and in 2020, we had about 70 boards. So this is really where the 2-page ballot has had an impact on the things that the recorder's office is responsible for. Now, a lot of work has already gone into this process. A lot of work is going to happen over the next week, a lot of long hours. And on this last note, I really want to thank a few people who have so far gotten us to this point. I want to thank the board. The board has allocated a lot of money in order to allow us to safely and securely do all of the steps in this process, and has allowed us to recruit a lot more temporary workers. I want to thank the county HR team who has been pulling out all the stops in order to get as many bodies into those different processing times, whether it be 5 p.m. to midnight or whether it be midnight to 6 a.m. I know that there's a lot of interest in election administration, but doing a repetitive task from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. is not the most glamorous job and is not something that everyone is looking to sign up for, but the county HR team has been doing that. This is also why the Board of Supervisors has seen in the future of elections that we're going to need more space, because we are at capacity right now for for 2 of those 3 shifts. And in the future, I think in 2026 or 2027, they're going to move the county into a new space where you can simply have things like ballot processing happening on a larger scale. And then lastly, I want to thank the Secretary of State's office. They have been pitching in as well. We had a number of representatives from the Secretary of State's office with us last night for the 5 to 12 and 12 to 6 a.m. Secretary Fontes himself was doing a little bit of ballot processing with me, as was Lisa Mara, the State Elections Director. So I know that was a lot. I apologize for all the time, but I wanted to give you an overview on those 3 topics, and then I will take questions after Zach has presented and when we take questions at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Recorder Richer. As was said previously, my name is Zach Schira, and I'm the Assistant County Manager for Elections and External Affairs here at Maricopa County. As we move into tomorrow, we move into the bulk of the board's responsibility when it comes to elections, right? In-person, election day, and tabulation. So I'd like to start with talking about the investment that the board has made in elections. We have invested in more vote centers, more check-in stations, and more voting booths than ever before. We have new printers and new high-speed tabulators, and we are ready to serve any voter who wants to cast a ballot on election day tomorrow. But people should remember that there will still be lines on election day around the valley tomorrow, especially during the high-trafficked hours in the morning, during lunch, and in the evening. And this is normal for a presidential election. And with a longer 2-page ballot, we expect it'll take folks a bit longer to fill that out in the vote center and to feed it into the tabulator. But as Americans, we're used to waiting in line. We wait in line for coffee, we wait in line for our groceries, sometimes we wait in line for new sneakers or video games if that's your thing. We can wait in line to exercise our right to vote tomorrow on election day. At the end of the day, after everyone has voted and the polls have closed, there's a new state law that requires us to count the early ballots that are dropped off on election day. We are happy to comply with this new law, but this will delay the time it takes for vote centers to close up and for us to get those election day results on memory cards back to our central counting facility at McTech. Our team will work diligently to close up those polling locations and to get stuff back, but we are going to prioritize safety and security over speed at all times. As we do every election, our first results drop will be 8 p.m., an hour after the polls close. We expect this will be between 70 and 75% of the early ballots that we have received to date. Additional results will be reported throughout the night, and those will be the in-person votes that we tabulate at our vote centers. The majority of ballots will be counted within the first 24 hours after the polls close. But it's important to remember that here in Arizona, our races are extremely close, and it still might take a few days for you, the media, to call those races. It is possible that some of the candidates who are ahead on election night, and some of those questions as well, might not be ahead and might not maintain those leads after election day as additional ballots are counted and reported. This is normal, and people should keep in mind that voting patterns in Arizona have changed over time. Who votes early and who votes on election day has not been consistent in recent years. So we ask you to be patient. Let us do our job, and we will be transparent about what we have done and what we have left to do. We will work hand in hand with the recorder's team as they verify signatures, process early ballots, and then we will get them tabulated and reported to you all. After Election Day, results will be released daily. We plan for that likely to be around the 7 p.m. hour, but we will be sending out information about when you can expect those posts after we get through tomorrow. And please know that despite what has been alleged in previous elections, there's not going to be a point where we stop tabulating ballots and reporting them along the way. We will be working long days and long nights for the week ahead. As for misinformation on Election Day, we will not be playing whack-a-mole. But what we will be taking very seriously is any misinformation that impacts a voter's ability to vote a ballot. That misinformation, we will be very aggressive in reporting. We want everybody to have the correct information so that they may participate tomorrow if they'd like to. I'll close out with this. We've hired 4,000 temporary election workers to facilitate the 2024 general election. These are your neighbors, these are your friends, these are people you go to church or see at your grocery store. I promise you that they want your vote to count and they want things to be facilitated fairly. We are excited for tomorrow. It's going to be a high turnout day. It's going to be a great day in Maricopa County, and we are looking forward to that. With that, we'll take your questions.
Actually, I'm going to throw up just a little bit more data at you before we go into the Q&A. This will be posted on countingballots.maricopa.vote. It does a little bit of a historical analysis of how long it has taken Maricopa County to count all of the ballots. This is not how long it has taken for the races to be called, so that as we move forward and we get into those days where we are still counting the ballots, people have an understanding that we are within the time frames that we have seen over the last couple of decades. This will also be available on our site. It gives historic turnout information in general that I think the media and the public will find very interesting. Again, Maricopa.vote is a wealth of information. We hope that you will visit that in the days to come. This is key critical information. Zach spoke to it a little bit ago. This is what the increase in resources that we have done specifically to be able to serve this community who will be voting a 2-page ballot this election. We have increased our resources, and at some of our largest vote centers, we will have 16 check-in stations, 4 ballot on-demand printers, and 68 voting booths. And so while we may see lines, it is our hope that these lines will continue to process through and that our poll workers are working as best they can. But as you know, for those of you who are from Maricopa County who voted that ballot, it takes a while. And so we are encouraging people to make a plan and take a look at that ballot before they get in line. So just to go through a few logistics things before we get to the Q&A. Obviously, there are a lot of members of the press here. We're excited about that. In Maricopa County, we pride ourselves in being transparent. We will have a media tent and workspace at McTech that will open at 6 a.m. on Election Day. This is for credentialed media only. We have been providing this information for weeks, so I'm not going to repeat where you get that, but you can certainly reach out to us if you have questions about that. We hope to hold daily press conferences at McTech. There are a lot of you here, so we're going to have to take a look at the logistics to determine where we can best answer all of your questions. And an exciting new thing that we're going to be launching is a new blog, and it will be at justthefacts.vote. This blog will be updated in real time throughout, it's actually up right now, throughout Election Day and in the days moving forward. It will have things like how many check-ins we've seen at a vote center. It will explain what the ballots that have been released that night, what do they look like, how many did that include. It will be able to give the community specific facts about Maricopa County elections, because as we know, there's going to be a lot of information out there for the public. We want people to go to trusted sources. JustTheFacts.vote is going to be a trusted source, and we hope that as journalists and for those of you who are watching online, that you will take the time so that we can process and administer this election without a large amount of distraction by misinformation that is being spread. So here is how we are going to do our Q&A. We did this before, probably 2 questions per person. We have microphones, we're streaming live, so please, we will raise your hand. I'm going to try to get as many as we can. We have a microphone on both sides of the room. 2 questions, identify yourself and your outlet. And then I'm actually, because we've got a mix of a lot of people up here, I'm going to try to figure out the best person to answer that question. You may think it's one person, but I'm going to call somebody up if it's a different person. So we are going to start here with Jeremy. Get him the microphone, please. Thank you.
I understand you mentioned to me earlier that we'll have a change this year in terms of when that cutoff point is for when the county stopped processing the early ballots that came in to verify the signatures. That first results drop that we get at 8 p.m. on election night. Usually, I believe those are ballots that have come in through Friday before the election. That cutoff point is going to be a little bit earlier now, though.
So I'm going to bring up the recorder to talk about what we can see in that 8 o'clock drop.
We will. So, thank you for the question, Jeremy. We will get to the board as many as we can. For the tabulation purposes, I think the cutoff for that was Monday this morning, and that included, like I said, about 2.2 million pages, and that translates to about 1.1 to 1.2 million registered voters that we have already done signature verification and ballot processing for. And then we are going to continue processing any early ballots that we've already done signature verification for, and those will be in the Wednesday results, which I think will be a little more robust than it has been in past years.
Robust.
Because there have just been more that have been in that time period, and that will not be reported at 8 p.m. on election night, but it will be available for reporting on Wednesday.
Okay, and specifically, what is that time period for the?
That is through as many as we can get to. So I don't know exactly what that translates into in terms of when somebody dropped off their ballot.
But it won't necessarily cover all ballots that came in through Friday, though?
We have about 1.5 million right now in our possession, and no, that will be about 1.1 to 1.2.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to get a little overwhelmed here. We'll go to this side of the room. Fields.
We got Sasha over here.
Okay, get our microphone, please. And then when we come back over here, Dennis, you had your hand raised? No? Okay.
So no, that's about on par with what is reported out typically at 8 p.m. on election night, which is going to be, we don't know yet what the total number of voters will be in this election, but it will probably be around 55% of the total vote will be available immediately at 8 p.m. Now, it is taking longer, each ballot packet, and that is why we have more boards, and that is why we have these overnight shifts as we have not had in the past. But it's consistent with what we've seen in the past from Maricopa County for the 2022-2020. Now, in terms of raw numbers, it is still more because we just will have more voters than, for instance, we had in 2022, when we had about 1.3 million voters.
I know that my ballot was received by your office on Friday. Should I expect then that my ballot is going to be included in that first round? Do you get what I'm getting at?
Will it be signature verified? Yes, it will be signature verified if you've dropped it off by Friday. I don't know if that will be processed and included for the 8 p.m. Tuesday night results. If it's not, then it would be in the Wednesday night results.
Okay, and then my second question is on the MVD glitch, and I'm sorry, Stephen, I'm going to pick on you again on this one. I'm just wondering if a voter was impacted by the MVD glitch. I know that their ballot is going to be counted, but how can they be certain of that? Like, what should they be thinking about? Because I think a lot of them might be nervous if they think that they might be impacted.
So backing up a second, this question is regarding the MVD issue, and this was an issue that my office identified about 2 months ago, which that the statewide voter registration system was communicating with the motor vehicle division about which voters had documented proof of citizenship on file. We found out that there were some that the MVD was reporting as having documented proof of citizenship on file, when in fact they did not have documented proof of citizenship on file because they moved to Arizona and they got a driver's license prior to 1996, when you were not required to provide documented proof of citizenship on file. However, they got a duplicate license after 1996. MVD's coding then translated to the statewide voter registration database that they got it after 1996, and it assumed that therefore they had documented proof of citizenship on file. Now, there was a question of, when we discovered this, what are we supposed to do with these individuals? Because Arizona law, in order to vote a full ballot, requires that you have documented proof of citizenship on file. We are unique in this respect. And so the way that we addressed this was that I filed this lawsuit against Secretary Fontes. The Arizona Supreme Court very helpfully took it immediately. They ruled on that. They said, because it is no fault of these individual voters, do not do anything for the purpose of this election. So we have not touched any of these voters. We have not changed the status of any of these voters for this election. Every single one of those voters in the affected pool of voters will be able to vote a full ballot for this election. And then what the mandate is moving forward is the Secretary is supposed to work with the 15 counties in acquiring documented proof of citizenship for those voters for moving forward. We are not going to be doing that over the next few days because we do not want anyone confused that it has any impact on this particular election. So that will be a post-canvass endeavor.
Okay, let's go back over to the side of the room. Nicole, we'll go up front here. Chelsea, please. Or Brittany, thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Grigg, ABC 15. I just want to clarify these numbers. So you've already counted 2.2 million pages.
I'm going to do a little bit of a clarification. So you have processing and you have tabulation. The numbers that the recorder reported were the number of pages that have been gone through ballot processing.
Okay.
Okay? So if on average, and we're finding that about 98% of the voters are returning both of their pages, the number of pages that they have processed, divide that in half, and that's the number of voters.
Here's my question. Are you far behind on processing the ballots right now?
No, simply put, no. Like I said, we're about on par with what we will have reported in the past at 8 p.m. on election night. Now, like I said, it is a lot of work, and that's why we're doing the round-the-clock shifts. But no, it will be approximately 55% of the eventual results will be available at 8 p.m. on election night, which is on par with what Maricopa County has done in the past.
Shouldn't you be more around 3 million right now, though?
Shouldn't we be more?
If you have 1.5, wouldn't that be 3 million pages?
Well, we would love to process all of them as quickly as
Because
possible, but it's consistent with where we've been in the past.
Okay.
And so for instance, if we receive something today, it's an early ballot, but we're obviously not going to have that signature verified in ballot process in time for it to be reported as for tomorrow's results.
And Zach mentioned it will be about 75% of the early ballots that we've received is what will be reported out at 8 p.m., which typically, and is in line with previous years, is about 55% of the total turnout that we see in Maricopa County. Lots of numbers, very confusing. Let's go back over to this side, Fields.
Hi, Caroline Bargoot with Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. How concerned are you about security and about threats and disinformation?
Okay, I'm going to bring up the sheriff to just give a couple of comments on that. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, and I know most of you were here earlier in the week. Our posture hasn't changed, reference election security. I know that's one of the key topics that we're looking not only in Maricopa County, but throughout the nation. We have partnered and planned with all the law enforcement in the Valley to include our state and federal partners. We've been planning lists like any major security event. Obviously, we are on high alert for anything that's threat related, comes through electronic media, but also the premises or the footprint relative to the polling places and the tabulation center. We will have a lot of resources out there, a lot of staff, a lot of equipment relative, and again, this is no different than a major event that any law enforcement plans for. It's unfortunate that it has to be elections security related, but since 2020, most of you have seen the dynamic change with what we do with the tabulation center, but also the law enforcement in the Valley that will be involved in this process to ensure safety and security for our community, for the workers that are involved in this, and make sure that the democracy is upheld and we get those ballots back over to McTech. So our posture will be stood up as far as election for weeks on end if needed. We will adjust accordingly as the environment and situation dictates. We will also be looking and monitoring anything related to threats, electronic media, whether it's in this country or outside of this country, and the public will be partnered with us on that to bring things to our attention as needed. But Elections has done a great job with the staff to get them trained. So at polling places, there's several layers of security involving those staff members that will diffuse any disturbances. If it has to rise to the level of law enforcement being involved, we are all at the ready throughout the Valley. I actually had a call with the DPS director today, Secretary of State, and even our federal partners out there that are willing to support as needed, especially in Maricopa County. So we're here, and our prosecutors are behind us as needed if there is criminal activity. So at this point, we've had a few threats throughout the cycle, and this even dates back, into the primary side, mainly related to people, and it's unfortunate, public servants just trying to serve their community and do their job. And obviously, any election workers, we're very vigilant of that. They've been nominal, but as we've seen in previous cycles, typically a lot of that will be as the results pull out, and unfortunately the polarization that starts to happen. So all we ask is that, again, that people hopefully do not cross the line. There's a difference between First Amendment freedom of speech and committing a crime. And in Maricopa County, it will be zero tolerance on anything related to criminal activity. We will take the necessary action, and our prosecutorial agencies are behind us to make sure that we set the line and the tone.
And just as a point of, we did do a press conference that was about a lot of security issues last Tuesday. That is on the YouTube page. You guys are welcome to log on, and the sheriff provided some wonderful comments specifically about that. Chris.
Hi. Two things.
Let's get you the microphone real quick.
Hi there, Chris Van Cleef from CBS News. Thanks, everybody. I wanted to ask first about the additional levels of sort of a ballot security, for lack of a better word, that have been added this year, and how that either changes what you do or lengthens the process, just to get a better understanding of that. And then I have a question for the sheriff.
So specifically, what do you mean by ballot security?
The needing to count certain the mail-ins that are dropped off the day of, and then for people for our audience that doesn't live here, understanding the signature verification a little bit better as to part of the reason why it takes days to count all these ballots.
Do you want me to hit on that real quick? So we do have new legislation, and at the closing of Election Day, poll workers will have to count the affidavit envelopes that are dropped off on Election Day as part of their closing process in Maricopa County. In Arizona, we have until 7 p.m. to take possession of a ballot in order for it to be count in the election. And so that new legislation is simply the counting of the envelopes. We're not actually hand counting votes. Once those envelopes have been counted, the other breakdown procedures have been done, then those envelopes, along with the memory cards that have been in the tabulators that are on site, are transferred to McTech, where we upload the Election Day results, which are on the memory cards. I know it's a little confusing, so if I'm not being super clear, let me know. Second, in Arizona, we do require that you show ID to vote. So for early voters, the way that they provide their ID, if they are mailing in or dropping off their ballot, is they sign the outside of their affidavit envelope that under perjury of law, this is me. And that replaces showing your ID at the polls. When we get that envelope, the very first step that we do is we check to make sure that that signature is the same as the signatures that we've received previously, because that acts as your official identification in order to vote.
And Sheriff, I know you talked about this at length last week, but it's a new week. You said your posture hasn't changed. I'm curious, on the eve of Election Day here, what's keeping you up at night, sir?
Well, I'll have to say, as a head of a public safety agency, there's a lot that keeps me awake throughout the entire year. Obviously, we're keen for the safety of not only our public servants out there, but our community at large. So we continue to prepare for everything. We can't necessarily predict everything. And again, the level of training, the level of practice that we've had with this is not new to Maricopa County. Some other jurisdictions that might see the eve of this happening and throughout the valley. It's not keeping me up. I just want to make sure that we're prepared. We have the staffing and resources, and that's something that we've been planning the entire year to make sure that we have. We will continue to evaluate. This is a fluid thing like anything else. How long this detail lasts, how many resources, where the activity may be for the need of public safety. We will continue to evaluate that, and we will stay stood up and vigilant to make sure that we address that, because the last thing our community needs to be is scared to go out and vote. The last thing our officials and people working the elections need to be is in fear of this. We do not live in fear. We live in the greatest democracy in the nation, and we should be standing tall and working together and respecting each other's community members. And so that's probably what keeps me up, is the fact that we've seen this divide, we've seen this problem throughout the nation. Hopefully 2024 will set a different precedence, that Maricopa County isn't in the spotlight, and that our nation starts looking at the need for respect to each other and the respect to this process, so that we have this leadership moving forward.
And what I might do is pivot a little bit and do one question, because there are a lot of you. Over here, Gabriel. Associated Press.
Associated Press. I just wanted to follow up on a story that VoteBeat had reported. Can you please confirm that Maricopa County moved about 2,000 voters affected by that MVD coding glitch to a not registered status, and also mistakenly asked them to provide documented proof of citizenship before 7 p.m. on Tuesday in order to vote?
Yes, the recorder will be able to answer that question.
So it has been an exciting few months in voter registration world because the law has been in such a state of flux regarding what is required for documented proof of citizenship and how that changes depending on what type of form. So originally, in the case Richer v. Fontes, the Supreme Court said that these affected voters should not have to do anything for this election. However, the guidance that was provided out through the state originally said if those affected voters submit a new voter registration form, then you still have to process that as any other voter registration form, and part of that would be running a check with the Motor Vehicle Division to determine if the registrant has documented proof of citizenship on file. Those people do not have documented proof of citizenship on file, and we learned that. However, later that guidance changed and said even if those affected voters submit a new voter registration form after the Supreme Court's ruling, then they should still be grandfathered in. And so what we did was for the 2,000 people who were in that affected pool who submitted a voter registration form lacking DPOC during the first guidance period, we then went back and we restored those 2,000 voters to full status consistent with the new guidance on how to follow that Richer v. Fontes Supreme Court ruling.
Okay, we're going to come over here, actually. We will, Alex.
County Recorder Richard, you mentioned that on the deadline about 40,000 ballots or voter registration forms were in some way problematic. You mentioned that they were in some way connected to a problem in Pennsylvania. Can you confirm that that company that you're referring to is Field Plus Media Corp? Can you tell me how many of those 40,000 voter registration forms were from Field Plus Media Corp? And can you tell me how many problematic voter registration forms that company, if it is indeed that company, have submitted, not just on the deadline, but overall this cycle?
Yep. So yes, that is Field Corps. Yes, this is a group that we have alerted in the past that we have been not wholly satisfied with the voter registration forms that have been submitted. Yes, we have discussed this with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Yes, they played a significant role in the 90,000 forms that were dropped off on the voter registration deadline on October 7th. No, I do not have the specific number for exactly how many of those forms were from Field Corps. Now, again, I will remind you that any single form that is processed that puts a voter into suspense status or where the voter has incomplete information, we have to, by law, still process that form, and we have to, by law, send a letter to the affected voter at the best address that we have, alerting the voter that he or she needs to take certain steps or provide certain documentation in order to be fully registered. And so when I talked about some of our constituent services work and some of the inbound calls, oftentimes those inbound calls and those inbound emails will be people providing documented proof of residency, documented proof of citizenship, or even just a address that got translated incorrectly on the handwritten paper registration form. I've seen date of births that have been translated inaccurately. I've seen just forms missing required information, and so they will provide that required information as well. Thank you.
Okay, yes, right here, Jen.
Hi. I'm going to ask the same question again on the time.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jen Fifield with VoteBeat. For the recorder, just on the timing of the release, 75 to 80% doesn't sound like 100%, which is what I'm used to hearing as of Friday. All of these have been counted. All of these are through the system. That sounds like fewer. You said you're delayed. Can you elaborate any more?
I'm happy to elaborate. We consistently receive early ballots. We received a lot of early ballots this weekend. We received a lot of early ballots by Monday. I do not have the exact breakdown of when we received each one of those early ballots. As you know, even early ballots that are cast at a voting location after somebody has shown identification still have to go to ballot signature verification, still have to be audited, still have to go to ballot processing. I give you the raw numbers, which is that we've processed about 2.2 million pages, and that translates to about 1.1 to 1.2 million voters. This does take a lot more time for the reason that I mentioned previously. That is consistent with percentage-wise where Maricopa County has been in past elections, and I think that we will be consistent in terms of finishing the count where Maricopa County has been in the past. I know that when I won my race in 2020, it was 8 days after Tuesday election day when that became something of a certainty. I hope, we all hope, that people will not be in suspense for that long. Suspense being a very different term than the suspense term I just talked about in the voter registration context, but we hope to move as fast as we can. However, we know that Maricopa County will be the subject of litigation, post-election litigation. We know that people care about every single part of this process that they might not care about in the context of Utah or California. So we will not cut corners on signature verification. There will be no skipping of an audit queue. We will not cut corners on documenting ballot chain of custody when we do ballot processing. The board is not going to cut corners when it comes to adjudication or ballot duplication. And so we will move through that as thoroughly and as accurately while still doing it as fast as possible.
Over here in the black.
Firstly, congratulations on all the great work. I'm a journalist from Estonia. This is really like mind-blowing how you guys operate. As a neighboring country with Russia, I want to address a question to Supervisor Bill Gates. Just what's at stake here? Why should Europeans really care about the democratic integrity of American elections? Thank you.
Well, first of all, welcome to Maricopa County. And we understand that over the last 4 years that really the eyes of the world have been on Maricopa County, and we're proud. We're proud to show off the thousands of workers who do incredible work, the partnership between the Recorder's Office and the Board of Supervisors. But what is at stake is very, very important and very serious here. And that is the foundation of this democratic republic, which are our elections. And we know that, again, there are people out there who are raising questions. And we have no problem with questions, obviously, as you guys have seen. We do these press conferences. We welcome the press in here. But once we've answered those questions, also, we ask that people accept that and move on. And so it is incumbent upon not only the voters here in Maricopa County, our team, but also the media, that we work at getting the truth out there, getting the facts out there, and that, like I said earlier, in the end, when there will be winners and losers, that those who are unsuccessful this time, they congratulate the victors and move on until the next day.
With Scripps News, this is probably best directed towards Bill, but I was on a call earlier today with CISA at the federal level, and they keep saying over and over that there's going to be a fire hose. There is a fire hose of disinformation, and a lot of it is coming from our foreign adversaries. To our international colleagues' question about Russia, is Maricopa County experiencing that right now? I saw a video floating around yesterday that it seems like it has Russian ties. What are you doing to combat that? I heard Zach say we're not playing whack-a-mole with misinformation, but that video, the whistleblower in it, encouraged people to turn out at a voting location and to protest. Will you address things like that?
So I think certainly we take a back seat to no one in addressing misinformation. We've done that for the last 4 years. If people haven't had the opportunity to go to justthefacts.vote, I encourage you to do that. We've been doing this for 4 years. And again, as Zach mentioned earlier, we are especially going to be focusing on misinformation over the next 24 plus hours that address the voter's experience. So if there's misinformation that's telling people that certain locations are not open, things of that sort, we're going to particularly be focused on it. But I want everyone to know, we understand in Maricopa County and in Arizona in general, there are a lot of people who are outside of this country who are not our friends, who want to cause chaos. And we, first of all, have our eyes wide open to that. We have an incredible cybersecurity team, both at Maricopa County and in Arizona. We understand what's at stake. But we would also ask folks, when they see things out there on social media that seem a little fishy, it might not be real. And so that's why we have been telling people now for years, go to the trusted sources. For us, go to maricopa.vote. That's where the facts are going to be out there. But most certainly, we understand that it's not just one particular country. We are seeing this from around the world, and we deal with this every day, and we have an incredible team on the cybersecurity side that are here to protect our votes and our residents.
Okay. All right, we're going to do 2 more questions. We're going to be around all week, folks, so we'll do the best we can. Yes.
Hi, Simon Kaufman, Scripps News. I think Zach mentioned there was new printer and tabulating technology. Is there any other new, machinery or technology that's new since the last election, and how that'll impact the count and the time it might take to canvass votes this time around?
Yeah, I can quickly answer that question. There has been about a $10 million investment by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors in the tabulation center in the last 4 years, and this includes new printers. It includes reconstruction of the spaces so that they can be more easily utilized for ballot tabulation and processing. This building was not built to be an elections tabulation center, so we have reconfigured our rooms so that we can have a higher output. We have invested in more high-speed tabulators. When we reconfigure the rooms, we allow for additional bipartisan boards to do duplication, to do everything that needs to be done. And so that investment also includes a lot of security upgrades as well. So we've also invested in fencing and in cameras and in things that I think a lot of government buildings already have, but prior to 2020, the Maricopa Tabulation Center did not. We've also invested in people. We want to make sure that we have an adequate number of full-time staff who are able to work year-round, because we do hire and train more than 4,000 people to run this election. And so there has been a significant investment in a majority, there's been a significant investment in many aspects of what we do. One more question over here. Yes.
Hi there, Lauren Clark with Fox 10 News in town. Thank you so much for hosting this. Does someone mind explaining to my audience how the political makeup of Arizona and how new legislation might make the timing of results a little bit different than what they're typically accustomed to, say, in 2012 or 2016?
So, I mean, there have been a number, if we're going back to 2012, 2016, there have been a number of changes. We've gone to the vote center model, which we're very proud of. 246 vote centers across Maricopa County, where regardless of where you live, you can go to the closest location. Even if you live in Gilbert and you work in Surprise, you can go on the lunch hour to that vote center in Surprise. So we think that's very convenient. But the one thing I wanted to touch on that was mentioned a little bit earlier was the new law that was passed by the legislature earlier this year that requires us to do a hand count of all of those green envelopes that are dropped off on election day. So as was mentioned earlier, we won't be able to, the memory cards will not be able to come in to our tabulation center until we've completed that. So again, that's a law of the legislature, and we follow the law, and we're very proud of county employees who have stepped up and we're going to have hundreds of county employees coming in fresh. Kind of picture someone coming in from the bullpen at the end of the day, and they're going to go through and count those. So that shows the team effort that we have here at Maricopa County, but that might slow things down a little bit. We're asking for people's patience, and like I always say, we understand people will be waiting on the results, but in the end, my colleagues and I here, all of the electeds, we will always pick accuracy over speed.
Okay, everybody, so we are going to shut down this portion of the news conference. Obviously, we are very available over the next couple of days, and media at risc.maricopa.gov is where you're going to be able to get the best information. Thank you all for coming and tuning in online.